Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Product Minds Chop Session, the On podcast, according to my colleagues here. It is a beautiful day in February. Oh my God, it's already actually February, which is crazy. Before you know it, it will be Christmas again. But we've been on a hiatus for a couple of weeks. There's been some travel, some speaking, whatever. Um, and obviously, I try to kill myself in California. But that's a story for another time. Today, we want to talk about something that's been in the air. People suspect something is going on, and it is foundational model degradation, right? We'll start there. So I will start by asking Ted to fill us in, and we'll talk about our experiences with this and then some of the implications for the future. Come on, Ted.
So I'm sure everyone here has heard about Claude Code and heard about all the wonderful models that go into Claude. And the most recent model from Claude World is Opus 4.5. And when it came out, and this was, maybe a couple months ago, right? It lauded as like complete game changer, right? And the examples of what people were able to vibe code with this were like outrageously awesome, right? Combined with Claude Code, you're seeing the rewriting of Slack, over the weekend kind of things, right? But along the way, something interesting happened, which is that it got worse. Now, this first started perhaps as a bit of a conspiracy theory on Reddit and other socials, and various developers blaming the tool as opposed to blaming their bad prompting or whatever. But it became more and more real, and to the point where there is a website, and we'll post a link, but is that now tracks exactly the degradation of the Opus 4.5 and actually a bunch of other LLM models as well. And what they're looking at is they've got certain coding benchmarks that they run, and they go, how correct are the results of these benchmarks, right? We run them, we'll see what happens. And and they chart them, right? And you can see the chart, and it's going in one direction for Claude. And so the real questions, there's a couple questions that's worth discussing. One is, what is going on? More importantly is, how can I build real robust software on top of something like this if it might, the foundation of your house might collapse? So that's the tee up. Let's see what we got.
So
Yeah.
me.
So go ahead, isn't it?
No, I was just want to say I thank you for sharing that link in our team channel. I was actually it was one of those things where I looked at it and I kept digging deeper and deeper. I knew I had heard people talk about it changing and degrading, and I even challenged Aji once. I was like, "Are you sure it's really are people really talking?" He's like, "I feel it." He kept saying, "I feel it," and then I went down the rabbit hole and I said, "Okay, yeah, it is changing. It is degrading." And it's got me thinking about a whole bunch of things, kind of to what you just said. So first off, thanks. I didn't even have a clue because I just wasn't expecting it. I know that there are feedback loops for LLMs, etc. But yeah, just thanks for flagging it. And it's got me thinking about a couple of big things, which we'll get into throughout this
And this is
podcast.
why Ezinne should listen to me all the time instead of
Yeah.
challenging me about the stuff that I know. Okay, so my approach to this is that over the break, and I'm very proud of this. People can look at my GitHub commit rate over the break. But over the break, I spent a lot of time with Opus because actually, end of the year, they give everyone a gift. They sort of open, I don't know why. Maybe they thought people were too busy doing Christmas, but they increased the limits. And I'm like, let's go. And then January wound up. So that ended December 31st. January wound up, and all of a sudden, Opus could not, the tool calling was terrible. I had to keep saying resume and don't repeat yourself and so on and so forth. So I knew something was going on. My spidey sense was tingling. Um, of course, it started showing up on Reddit and so on and so forth. But that's not the point. Like, this has always happened, and if you've spent a lot of time building or using AI, N8N, I'm going to throw out some tools. Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about. But N8N, uh, using Claude Code and so on, you can feel it in your bones when the problem solving ability dips. Or the tool calling. Tool calling is like a huge litmus test. All of a sudden, it can't call bash really well. All of a sudden, it can't write to your file system very well. It's like before it handled all the spaces really well. Now it doesn't. You can tell. Now, I think our point is, first of all, why, right? We're not AI researchers, but there are some stuff that we can talk about. And second of all, what are the implications? Okay, so let me just start with the why. One is speculative and one is real. There's a lot of data drift. Like these models not only are trained, but they absorb new information all the time. And people wanted to absorb new information. We've gone from a world where like it says, oh, I was trained on January 2023 data. I'm sorry. I can't answer the questions anymore if they're current. They don't do that anymore. And the reason is they backfill the data. They absorb more data into it. It's just an LLM technique. When that data changes dramatically and differently, right, the model's performance can change. Boom, right? And of course, there's this more speculative thing, which is you understand that people are no longer just training on internet absorption, right? AI is creating synthetic data. So there's a synthetic data that's a huge part of LLM training now, because there are more and more parameters needed to build this more stuff. Like, is that synthetic data good, I guess?
Right. Right.
MIT guy, what else do you know about model collapse?
There's also usage, right? Which is, let's understand that, the way any of these companies work is they have a finite number of compute power, which in most cases is a finite number of CUDA cores available. Okay, that oscillates throughout the day, throughout different regions throughout the globe. And as people consume those CUDA cores, they have to distribute out the juice across all the same people, right? Because if they just cut off user number 3 million, that person's gonna be pretty pissed off. So they have to kind of spread it out a little bit, right? So there's a lot of dynamic flow that's going on.
So are we talking about hardware throttling? So like literally inference horsepower?
I think partly you're seeing prioritization problems, like when they're, only really on a macro sense. I don't think on a micro sense, right? But on a macro sense, yeah, I think that's right. I think if they oversell as this, they're putting new CUDA cores on capacity, you're going to see a problem, right? And that this is similar reason why we all got this extra bonus over the holidays, because lo and behold, people that were on vacation and not coding, the rest of us took up their extra stuff and they gave it away to us for free, which was actually a good way to hook us up on it, right? Like hook us on it, right? On the candy. So
can I make a sub point that makes your point? Sometime in October, Claude went from, this is all practical, Claude went from monthly limits to weekly limits. So imagine they give you 200,000 tokens a month. You can code, and then maybe 2-3 weeks in, you use 200,000, and then they throttle you or they cut you off or ask you to upgrade or to pay for additional tokens. This is how I operated in September and October. Sometime in November, they went to weekly. So if you have 200,000 tokens a month, the deal went and you only got 50,000 a week.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that changed the world. So the reason I bring that up is that people who use this all the time understand this, but that actually changes the way you use it, and it's evidence of throttling, which Ted just talked about. Isn't that you had
I was simply when he talked about the candy, I was like, yeah, I was one of those people during the holidays. I was using it, and then as it went away, I was like, oh crap, I'm hitting my limits quickly. So guess what I did? I upgraded to the
everybody went to max after the break because we got hooked on coding.
We did.
But here we go. Going back to the thing here is that now you're seeing more and more stories of people, right, who have gone to max and now they're still just like a good friend of mine. So I know this isn't just hype. Like a friend of mine, I just posted the same story to LinkedIn, right? Of, hey, he consumed all of his max credits in 4 days, right? And it's just like, why did I do that? Like, what happened? And let's go back to model degradation, though, right? So Oji went through some of the fundamentals of like on the macro sense of how a model works, but the regardless of why it happens, the model degradation is real, again, as tracked through this website, and maybe we should give them a nice little plug here. It's Margin Lab, right? marginlab.ai. So go to marginlab.ai and you'll see that they've got trackers there that show the degradation of code in quantified form. Claude code in quantified form. So the key here is, what do you do about it, right? Because that's really the next question, right? It's one thing when I'm vibe coding something for fun, right? Or a tool that I'm going to use myself. It's another when I'm trying to ship product, right?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, we've been telling a lot of our clients and friends and people who we work with, like, hey, build at the core, really use LLMs in your software. And it feels like it's almost like building on like rented property or rented land, something that's shifting. Forget the hardware is an issue, obviously, but like if in the core of the brain that is the LLM, if it's shifting and yet it's core to delivering value, then I mean, you've got to start thinking about how we mitigate risk. Like, is there an SLA that we should be expecting of uh, LLM providers? Should people be, like I was talking to you guys before, just asking what percentage of people are actually using open source and self-hosted models to mitigate this? So that's where my mind is. Thoughts?
Yeah, no. So here, I because of the, I tried to transform Typeform into an AI company. I actually know a little bit about this. At the highest end, Google, and I'm assuming OpenAI and Google, I don't know about Anthropic, will give you a cluster and run your own AI and keep it like enterprise stable, right? Uh, they did this in the early days. I think that there's less of a need for it. People also ask for that if they want privacy and so on and so forth, all the guarantees, fintech and so on. But of course, the other level is they give you access to the model at an enterprise contract, right? And then they tried and say they will keep it stable. And of course, there's everything else, which is you don't have enterprise guarantees and it changes. Now, just to be clear, the first version, all the versions can still have model drift, right? Because you don't want to be, I mean, if you're an enterprise customer and all of a sudden the consumer people have better models than you, that's not good. You still want you still want good stuff. So all of them are sort of different levels of SLAs. But I think the thing that, so I guess the point is for people who are listening, there are ways to get better guarantees if you pay a lot of money, right? And some companies do that, but it does not insulate you from model drift, not
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah, but when I talked about SLAs, I wasn't talking about like uptime and all the hardware
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. It's more,
Well,
and I'm making
freezing
this
it.
up. No, I'm actually making this up. It's like, how do you guarantee its intelligence, right? How do you
Yeah.
guarantee that,
You can't.
like, so no, hear me out. Like, hear me out. So the same way we tell people to have evals, right, and test against certain things, perhaps, and again, I'm making this up as we're going, perhaps the enterprise guarantee, there is a battery, like the same way this company is running certain tests to see the performance. Maybe there's a booklet of evals or tests on intelligence that gets submitted as I sign an enterprise deal. And I need to see it perform at a certain amount of time.
Oh,
So over time,
you're
oh,
giving enterprises a bad, like an idea that the LLM providers won't like at all,
Not at
because
all.
that's
but
not how it's happening.
That's not
That's
how it
no,
not.
happens.
I'm
Right.
paying
You
for
can't get that.
intelligence. I'm paying for intelligence. I'm just like, guys, I'm paying for intelligence.
Are
I'm
you
not just
panicking right now? Like, like, is that what's happening?
no,
No, but
it's
no,
just as
this
I
is not
think
how
of
it works. This is
clients.
not how it
Mhm.
works. But maybe this is how it should work.
Sure,
That's the thing, right?
that's what I'm saying.
Because I think enterprises don't want to be the experts on evals. They just
Mhm.
don't, and so they're public evals. So maybe they just get their own battery of evals and run it all the time and say, "Oh, you're dumber, so I'm paying less today." Who knows? But
Or,
look,
or a standard body, okay? It doesn't have. It could be. Here's a battery. Sorry, I know. I'm just trying to protect. I'm just wearing the hat that I used to wear at all these other companies. And in order for me to know I'm getting what I'm paying for beyond uptime and all those types of guarantees on the hardware side, is how do we ensure and how do we begin to flag when there is an issue, particularly when the business is built off of this? So,
It, it,
yeah,
it it's
that's kind of where I'm
super
coming from.
difficult,
and
right?
that's what we're
And
saying. And we're saying that doesn't exist.
it's very difficult.
Go
And
ahead,
and I
Ted,
think
please.
And
You
I
should.
think you actually run into multiple different levels of problem here, right? Because there's the actual subtle degradation is much harder to pick up than the macro degradation, right? So, before when we were just jamming, we were talking about, say, a
Mhm.
chatbot or some kind of conversational interface that suddenly, regresses, right? It suddenly goes from, a very intelligent college student to a very immature middle schooler, right? And if this is your support chatbot and your customers are using it, you may not notice that, right? You might have to have an eval that picks that up, but they notice
Mhm.
it, and they then your brand erodes, right? Because they go, wait a minute, what the hell is going on, right? Or how about you have some kind of a language analysis bot right? And then suddenly it's picking up all the wrong cues. Its level of capability is degraded, right? Like this is a real big concern when we talk about AI at the core, which, as you say, is exactly what we push our clients to do for real, and for good reason. And I think, look, so I just want to clear, like, there are obviously many ways that we can use, or anybody can use these various pieces of software, right? And so we talked about two different models. There are many different models of not just LLMs, but whether you want to host it yourself or whether you want some kind of hybrid, or whether all different ways to do this, right? But I think the answer here, unfortunately, is the same answer as before, which is you have to be pretty defensive about this if you want to put this enterprise grade, right? And that's not really different, right? Because you think about if you're building an enterprise software that relies on APIs to all sorts of things, some kind of single sign-on provider, maybe a third-party database, maybe whatever, right? Queues that you might rely on, all those. Like, you are still the person that is selling to the client, and when your brand is in front of that bad experience, no one cares whether it's because the third-party database is no longer performing to spec, right?
Yeah. So two quick points on that. So let's move on to like maybe second and third order consequences. Model at the core, we talk about that, versus at the edge. So we're basically saying if you do model at core, which is what you should do in 2026, you have a new risk, which is model degradation. And actually, no matter how much you pay, you can't mitigate that completely. And not that we know of. Maybe someone who's listened to the show will tell us, someone will tell us that is actually possible. But as far as we know, it's not possible. Maybe the rate of degradation or how deep it goes can be limited in some way, but we don't know that that's possible. But what if your functionality, like building formulas or whatever, it completely dependent on the model intelligence? And in fact, some software cannot work with a lower intelligent model at all. If the thing you rented degrades, are there legal consequences? Do you suddenly owe your customers money because the functionality is not there? Who's going to create the insurance for model degradation, right? If that's the thing. Like, is that I guess I don't know how to ask
Yeah,
it.
So,
we do businesses during this podcast. Just clear, okay.
But there's a difference, right? The outcome that if you're building a product on LLMs, right, you are banking on intelligence to drive an outcome. As long as that outcome is maintained for the user, right, they probably will notice some degradation, but they are not banking on quote unquote intelligence. They're banking on that outcome, right?
No, not
So,
necessarily. No, not necessarily at all. Like if the thing I'm selling you is an analysis, say like
yeah.
of people's speech patterns,
hmm
right? As a
hmm
way to tell if they're lying or not, say
hmm
law enforcement, security, some
hmm
national security,
hmm
and it can't do that, then boom,
Yeah. So,
you
yeah.
it doesn't do it.
But that's kind of where I was going, right? So yes, I joked around about if I had a company that was doing this, I joked around about, hey, what if I ran a whole bunch of evals or whatever it is, and I sign on a dotted line that once it goes down this, a level, then it needs to I need to be paid by whoever is my provider. You can also have that as a test within your organization, right? So that immediately you start to see that any degradation past the point before it reaches the point where your customer experiences it. Does that make sense? So I think
Yeah,
that
but
there
you're
are
giving
ways.
me work. You're giving me work to do. Like I'm still pissed off. I still have
But
brand risk.
yeah, but it's well that's the thing. Even software, like if you are in Hadoop, if you're in a cluster, if you use Cloudflare, etc., things happen and you have to monitor them, right? So this is just
Interesting. So
to your
you're
point.
saying that this is just an additional risk, which looks like other infrastructure risk, and you
Yes.
should set up monitoring to
So
catch
it's
it to protect your customer.
hence my
And
point.
then you can send them the bill to repay you.
Exactly. So I need an SLA in
That's
order
right.
for me to recoup my value. And I know it sounds silly, but in order for me to recoup my
I feel like
money,
you're defending the man. That's what I feel right now,
I'm
emotionally.
not. I'm just being very pragmatic about if
Let
it's
me
not
throw in some
definitive.
analogies.
Mm-hmm.
Let me throw in some
Yeah.
analogies, right? Because in the tech world, we're a little bit different, right? So I have other businesses that work in the real world that actually make products. And when you make products, you source them from suppliers, right? And guess what? right? You have delivery tolerances of the things that they're supplying, right? Someone's supplying to you a coaster. It has a certain size and a certain shape, a certain weight. And if it doesn't exceed those tolerances, you don't pay for it, right? You send it back and you say, send me the one that actually meets the tolerances that we expect, right? This is going to be the future for these things. It has to be, right?
Mhm.
Has to be, because
It
you
has
can't
to be.
your company on just random supplier risk.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It has to be
and
written to the contracts now.
yeah.
Even as we speak, it has to be written into contracts.
But if you're smarter though, like, so again, putting myself in the shoe, if I built a company, etc., we also would say another way to mitigate, like we're thinking about mitigating strategies, another way to mitigate is actually begin, like really think about how you model abstract, right? How you, if something, so I guess for all my builders out there, right now, you may choose Opus 4.5, okay? If things begin to not work well and your code is so intrinsically built with it, then you end up being in
So
big trouble.
can
So
I
model
can I
abstraction
comment
becomes a
on
big
this?
thing. Yes,
Can I comment on this? Well, in
please.
2023, 24, when we're you just went working on Typeform, I literally spec'd out a model abstraction layer, right?
There
Because
you go.
we didn't know how good it was going to be. So I literally built a middleware that I could plug Opus, I could plug Anthropic and so into. And then there were two layers. One is redundancy and one was actually capability. So
Mm-hmm.
I would in real time calculate how much intelligence a feature needs and then use whatever model supplied that intelligence
So
at the cheapest rate. So it was both redundancy,
Nice.
but cost optimization. Like it says Flash is needed for this feature, boom, it uses Flash. But, and even as we build like Fabric,
mm-hmm.
yesterday we designed a system that would use OpenAI's lowest model, Flash, to do some spam filtering,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they'll use Claude to do reasoning on borderline cases.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
people
this is
have to start doing that.
so exactly, this is exactly the point I was trying to make, is that number one, you understood the threshold, the intelligence threshold to deliver value, right? You had to know it and map it out. And in order for you to have that abstraction. And it also allows you to do a couple of things which are really smart, which is operational efficiency, which is the cheapest place, right? Where you can get this level of intelligence that you can abstract from, should you want to kind of arbitrage and try and figure out what's going on. And then the last is, because you understand the minimum level or threshold you have need for intelligence, then you can then write that into the contract. So regardless, like if I was advising a CPO, CEO, CTO, that's where we should be going. It is, no matter what, you need to understand your threshold of intelligence required, have things that can test it, flag it, monitor it, etc. Have it then work to your advantage in the contract with the provider. Have it work as a new SLA that you're monitoring, and then have it be something that maybe allows you to arbitrage, right? Use this token when,
Right.
etc. So
Keep it model.
anyway,
Yeah.
point. I love this topic. Actually, now it's giving me a lot of ideas.
No, honestly, I think we should do some more further writing on this, because I think this is a deep topic about defensive programming, right, using LLMs. And this, again, there are analogs here to the physical product and physical world. There are analogs here to, let's call it a less certain environment, when you're using suppliers of things that you're just not 100% what you're going to get. And now you got to be like, listen, I need to make sure it does this the way I need this, and this done. It is extra work, right? There is more work now. But again, this kind of makes sense. I think about this in the context of if you had humans doing this, right? You wouldn't just have, first of all, you would train the humans, right? But you would also make sure you'd have to spot check to make sure humans are doing the job properly. Apparently, and this is not obvious. This is sorry, not just seems very obvious to us, maybe not so obvious to other people, but this non-deterministic software must be treated the same way. You have to spot check it. You have to make sure it keeps performing the way that you
We have
want it.
to start thinking of it not just as code, but as rented intelligence that has a threshold, has some capabilities, and people will start to write all that stuff. It's rented intelligence level, it's rented capabilities level into their SLAs so that they can rely on it. Because that's what it is. It's a mini me. And this is weird to say, but I've started to think that these LLMs actually we tend to think they're not creative and intelligent, but I think it's because we overvalue human intelligence, right?
Yeah.
We overvalue human intelligence.
I mean,
So
we're human, so yes.
yes, we are the
Tell me
apex. At least
more.
we think we are the apex.
Not
Tell me
So
anymore.
more.
so before I go into that, because maybe this is a sort of a slide onto the other side. The last thing I want to say about depending on LLMs is the other thing that's emerging in a agentic world is memory, right?
Yep.
Context. People are not seeing context just as all the data in the organization or all the data on your desktop, because you want persistent memory. You don't want to re-upload the data in your organization when you're relying on LLMs. It's annoying and it could be a lot. And so here's the issue of portability. First of all, if one LLM has your memory, your process memory or vectorized memory or whatever it is, if it goes down, your software goes down. If it
Yep.
gets dumber, your memory isn't as effective. Right. So people need to start thinking about portable memory. They need to take the memory with them, whether it's the raw data, which they don't want to re-upload, the vectorized version of it, or whatever, middleware of memory that you have. People need it to be portable. I
That's
could go into like Fabric and how it does that, but that's not the point. The point is to say intelligence should be portable, but memory should also be portable. That's the second thing that people have to talk about. Now, I'll let that rest and say, and I'll just throw out what Ezinne has asked me to do, which is a long time ago, there were two versions of intelligence, right? There is crunching, computing, right? Which is what most people walk around thinking is that the brain absorbs and synthesizes, stores, synthesizes. Well, we've known people who are neuroscientists. I went down a rabbit hole years ago, know that the brain does not actually do that. It does not compute. The brain predicts, and it predicts before sensing. The brain predicts that my doorknob is here. It says the doorknob is here. And then you touch it, and then it confirms that the doorknob is here, and that's how you learn. Right? People think we compute, we don't. We predict, and then we absorb feedback and adjust our prediction. Now, how do LLMs function? Right? We've said this as a parody all the time. They predict the next word. Yes?
Yep.
They predict the next word, the next paragraph. This is how we've designed them. And we poo-poo this design. We say it's probabilistic math, and we are like, ha, 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 they're dumber than us. But actually, in reality, they work like us because people don't understand that the brain predicts too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, by the way, this is why, the reflex concept of like the guy who can catch the ball that they can't really see. It's because your brain is actually like, obviously you're not.
That's right.
Your
That's
brain
right.
is actually just shortcutting the thinking part of your brain. The thinking part
We
of your
have
brain.
accidentally designed LLMs to work like us, but in a way that people don't understand that we work.
So that's fascinating. It opens up a whole new box. But yeah.
What is the name of that big soft talent augmentation team that everybody uses? Poland, Ukraine. We met a guy from, what is that company? Anyway,
There are many, but
pick one. Tell me, pick one. So
who's the guy we ran into at the Sankas thing?
yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, the big idea here that I'm realizing is that it's almost as though if a CEO was building a company and scaling a company and they chose to, instead of hiring internally, they filled their entire team with third-party developers, product managers, etc., and had absolutely no control on who showed up the next day. You following? Where that memory can go out any day, they can swap out a product manager anytime, and you basically have a team of people that are not your employees, right? It feels like that's where we are in this building products on top of an LLM. It's like you don't know who the hell is going to show up tomorrow. All you know is that you contracted your entire staffing to this third party organization. I'm saying this to just bring it home for people. And we got to think about what that means. If you can see that, like, hey, you show up, you don't know whether it's John, Frank, LLA, who's going to be there, and what's their intelligence level, their experience level. Do they have context from the last person that came? That's where we almost are. So it's just, I was trying to bring it home. I don't know. Okay,
No,
I know we need to wrap up,
that
but
is a
yeah.
very
No,
good
no, I
insight.
think Ted mentioned a little bit of that. Like, I think he's like, if you have people,
Mhm.
you have to sort of guarantee their quality.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you're saying that, yeah, if you outsource people, that you also have to guarantee their quality. So basically, especially enterprises have to think about how to mitigate that risk, right? And how to guarantee. Usually what you do is that you have a relationship with a good engineer, you know their intelligence, and you stick with them, right? In that organization. And you don't let them shift them around, if that
Yeah,
makes
but
sense.
you can't, right? Your contract is not with the engineer; it's with the
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right.
other.
And of course that engineer evolves, right? They have good days, they have bad days, they get new skills, their girlfriend moves to Poland, they follow her. Like there's all sorts of interesting things that can happen,
Yeah.
right?
Anyway,
So
yeah.
yeah, fascinating. Fascinating.
Okay, guys. Are we at a stopping point? Do we have anything to add? Any freebies to throw our audience?
I think there's more to cover on this one, right? I think we've thought about, first of all, we created 3 new companies, 3 new business models. We've got all sorts of new writings that we need to think about. I think there's this is honestly a big topic, right? This is a big topic of how people who are listening to this can really take this advice and try to make it actionable. And I think we can expect more from us because we have a lot more thinking to do.
Yeah, we'll write about this. We obviously this is a chop session, so this is not scripted. And I feel like we there's a lot of different directions this could go, and you'll start seeing that on our Substack as we
Yeah.
go. So, but in the
Yeah.
meantime, isn't any last word?
No, just you always want to go back. For those who are product thinkers, product builders, we touched on 3 core things that I think is important to think through: is abstracting your memory, abstracting the model, and just standardizing context. Those are the core things we're going to work on, like everybody said. But for those who want to wait till next time, like, and want something to think on, those are the core things. Like strategically, we need builders to be thinking about that.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing it to the ground for us, because we always want to make sure you have concise takeaways. And so with that, we'll see you guys next time, and follow us, read the Substack, and stay well.
Yeah.
Thanks.